Hearing that, Sun-ah then asked who they were. Yona replied, they were hero cadets from the cube. She also told them, if they lowered their weapons now, then there would be no bloodshed. Sun-ah was a little annoyed with her intervention. She then released a little energy to release the entanglement of her whip. It allowed her to release the entanglement of her whip and even damage it a little. Yona was then shocked when she saw that she could release the entanglement of her whip so easily. Yona at this time did not seem to know who she really was, but Sun-ah was then shocked when Jane suddenly attacked her when she was not fully prepared, but fortunately she managed to dodge her attack. Sun-ah then coated her weapon with mana power, and attacked her again. The clash of their attacks was really fierce. Yona was even overwhelmed by the shockwave created by the collision between their weapons, and as Sun-ah continued to attack Jane relentlessly, she then finally managed to repel her. Disbelief could be seen clearly in Jane's eyes, as she saw her sword that was about to break after repeatedly clashing with her. And as she could only helplessly lie on the ground and watch Sun-ah's sword attacking towards her, the sword was suddenly held by someone before it could even hit her. That person was Suho. Sun-ah was then surprised to see that. Jane then sighed in relief after her life was saved. She broke out in a cold sweat because she really almost reached her death earlier. Sun-ah then asked Suho who he was. She told him to leave immediately before she cut them both off, but Suho said no, he didn't know why they were fighting, but he wouldn't let anyone get caught up in their fight. He suggested, it would be better if she stopped right now. Sun-ah was then very upset to hear that. She decided not to hold back anymore. Feeling angry, she then attacked Suho with all her might, but while she was busy dealing with Suho, Jane did not waste this opportunity and immediately ran away from there. Seeing that, Sun-ah then immediately chased her. She told her to stop. Hearing that, Jane then ridiculously said, would she stop if she were her? She then said goodbye to her former best friend, but she was then surprised and confused when she saw a dark aura appear from behind her. Sun-ah was a little overwhelmed by the appearance of the dark aura. A creature then emerged from the dark aura which then immediately took Homer's ring from her. They could only be shocked and confused when they saw that creature. They didn't understand what it was. The creature was shaped like a female human with legs filled with tentacles like an octopus. She looked happy when she finally managed to get Homer's ring. The scene was fully seen by Hajin. He could only chuckle at it. At the restaurant where Hajin and Nayun ate earlier, Nayun was seen feeling frustrated. She seemed to be lost. She kept coming back this way. She was also confused at this time. She was sure that she had followed the map, but why did she come back here? She blamed her smartwatch for failing to show her directions. She even went as far as blaming the company that made it and decided to find out what kind of bad company created something like this. But when she found out that the watch was actually made by her father's company, Nayun could only remain silent. She had also tried to contact Yona, but she did not answer her calls or read the messages she sent. She was confused about what exactly she was doing. Yona did not read or answer her calls, of course, because she did not even have time to open her smartwatch at this time. Seeing the creature in front of her, Sun-ah then realized that it was a jinn. Realizing that, Sun-ah then pointed her sword at the jinn, and told her to drop the Homer's ring right now. Hearing that, the jinn then stared at her and said, this is not an item that can be owned by people like her. They, the evil society, will take this ring. Hajin was still observing the scene using Thousand Miles eyes. Now that the evil society had the ring, there was a very low chance that they could get it back even if everyone cooperated. Since there was no other choice, Hajin then decided to execute the plan B. He then tied the ether to his arm. He shaped the liquid like some kind of rope. After measuring for a moment, Hajin felt that this distance should be enough. He then threw the ether towards the jinn. Hajin's goal was to snatch Homer's ring from the jinn's hand remotely using the ether. The jinn was really surprised and confused by what it was. She wondered who did it. Hajin's action seemed so clean that it was not even detected by them, but while the jinn was busy worrying about it, Sun-ah suddenly attacked towards her. Hajin was happy to see his plan succeed. He also thanked the jinn. Because of her, they would not chase him because they were busy dealing with her. If he just left with this ring now. But that thought was immediately dispelled when he saw someone attacking towards him. The person's attack was powerful enough to destroy the floor there. While walking towards him, the person said that he could not do that. He also asked, where did he want to take the ring? Hajin could only curse when he saw that person. He did not expect that there was a second Jin. The Jin then greeted him and introduced himself. His name was Sidious. He wondered if it would be easier to explain if he said he was a member of the evil society. He also praised his action earlier. His ring-stealing technique was flawless. Shillison could not prevent it. That seemed to be the name of the Jin faced by Sung-ah and others, hearing his praise. Hajin then humbly said that it was nothing. Sidious continued, because he was quite cunning. He was sure he knew what he was going to say. He then told him to hand over the ring. Hearing that, Hajin said that he couldn't do it. Sidious was then annoyed to hear that. He hated it when this happened. People interfered when everything was almost done. What else could it be? He then prepared his attack. He only needed to take it by force. After reactivating his lightsaber, with a slashing motion, he then attacked towards him. Hajin was quite surprised when he saw the attack that was directed at him. The attack was really strong to cause such a powerful effect. But fortunately the attack did not succeed in hitting him. He might be dying or maybe even die if he was hit by the attack. Seeing that, Sidious then asked him, what was it that made his hair stand up? He explained, this is a special weapon that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit, the mana sword. As long as the wearer has sufficient magic power, this sword can be stronger than a low-tier relic. After saying that, he then again told him to hand over the ring before he had to hurt him. Hearing that, Hajin then thought. One of the benefits that the Jin received from their contract was the development of explosive magic power. The synergy between the characteristics that the Jin had and the sword was obviously very suitable. If only he could do something about the sword. Not giving him time to think further, Sidious then attacked him again. Seeing that, Hajin then quickly moved to dodge. He was completely overwhelmed in the face of his attack. He then asked Sidious to discuss this first. He could give up the ring if he agreed to talk. Hearing that, Sidious asked him, why did he have to do it? He could kill him and take the ring. Hajin asked, didn't he want to negotiate just now? Sidious was really annoyed with his pleasantries. He told him that he couldn't beat him by stalling. Obviously, he was much weaker than those fighting in there. His only weapon was a pistol, and he could barely dodge his attacks with his physical abilities. What made him think he could fight a Jin? He was tired of playing with him. He then reactivated his lightsaber. In a slashing motion, he then said goodbye to him. But, nothing happened when he swung the lightsaber. They were then surprised to see that. Sidious was really confused about it. He didn't understand why the lightsaber suddenly didn't work. Seeing that, Hajin was silent for a moment. He then knew the reason behind it. He then said to Sidious, that sword would no longer function for today. Sidious was then shocked and confused to hear that. Hajin said that he was a very lucky person. The reason behind that was because his extreme luck was active. It weakened the mana sword, but Sidious just thought he was bluffing. Sometimes weapons can also malfunction. Even without it, he was confident that he could kill him in an instant. Hearing that, Hajin said that he was curious if it was true. He then changed the remaining stigma into light magic power. He applied it to the bullets in the gun. He also changed the gun into shotgun mode. Knowing Hajin was planning something, Sidious then immediately moved to attack him. But, when the distance between him and Hajin was so close, Hajin then fired his shotgun. The ending was predictable when he was hit by a shotgun bullet blessed by light magic power at such a close distance. While other cadets were busy facing the enemy, Nayan herself was now playing video games to pass the time. She stopped looking for the location of the party after getting lost without direction. She also noticed the police who were noisy from earlier. She wondered where they would go. She had contacted her friends who came to the party, but none of them gave an answer. It made her depressed, but she then confusedly wondered why she was even disappointed. She had been influenced in a strange way, but she was then surprised and confused when she saw Hajin, who suddenly sat next to her. After realizing from her shock, Nayan then immediately asked, why is he here? Hajin's condition does not seem to be okay at the moment. He said that he was a little tired. Nayan was then confused to hear that. She didn't understand what he was saying, but she was shocked when she saw Hajin fall unconscious just like that. She then immediately asked him, what was wrong with him? Was he sick? But Hajin never answered or woke up when she kept calling him. Hajin himself was now dreaming. Seeing the scene in front of him, Hajin wondered where he was at this time, but he then immediately remembered. He had just messed up his CSAT. It was a kind of university entrance test. In the middle of his musings, someone suddenly called him from behind. Hearing that, Hajin then immediately looked back. There, he then saw his parents. He asked, why did they both come here? the weather today is very cold, but his parents were surprised when they saw their son suddenly shed tears. Hajin could not stem his tears, feeling guilty. He then told his parents that he had messed up his exam. Seeing Hajin crying, they then immediately comforted him. They said that it was okay, and when Hajin woke up from his long sleep while shedding tears, he then confusedly wondered, "Where am I?" When Soho, Nayun and Natasha came to visit him, they were then surprised to see him awake. Nayun then annoyedly said to him, did he know what difficulties it was for her to bring him here? She told him to pay attention to his body condition. Nayun also laughed at him when she saw him crying. She asked, was he that sick? Hajin was a little embarrassed to hear her teasing. Soho sighed for a moment seeing the interaction between the two of them. He then asked Nayun to wait outside. Nayun was then confused to hear that. Did she say the wrong thing? Different from Nayun, Natasha brought him a drink and fruit. She asked, is he feeling better? Hajin answered yes. Natasha said that he was a little tired. She asked him not to push himself and rest well. Hajin understood. By the way, he then asked, where is he right now? Natasha said that they were at the mansion. This was the room given to him and Kim Soho. Hearing that, Hajin realized that they were already at their accommodation, which is the mansion. It was past 10 now. Natasha then asked him, did he want to eat something? Hajin replied no, he didn't need it. Hajin realized that the assassination episode was about to start. He was happy because he woke up before the incident started. After making sure his condition was fine, Natasha then said goodbye and asked him to rest well. She would go together with Miss Nayun now. Nayun was surprised to hear that. She then irritably asked, why do they always tease her? Natasha said that it was late at night, that was the reason. Soho then waved goodbye. When it was just the two of them in the room, Soho then peeled the apple skin for him. He asked, is he really okay? Is he sure he can move? Hajin replied yes, he was really okay. Soho was relieved to hear that. After opening his smartwatch, Hajin then saw the article that reported the Jin attack incident at the party last night. After reading the article, Hajin was relieved to know that no one was seriously injured or killed, seeing that they did not state anything other than this. It seems Jane managed to escape safely. Hajin then asked Soho about the incident. Soho said that he couldn't tell him the specifics, but nothing bad happened. The Jin escaped before the assigned heroes arrived. He then asked Hajin to eat the apple he peeled. Hajin thanked him, but Hajin was then surprised when he saw Soho's hand that was currently peeling the apple skin. His fingers appeared to be wrapped in bandages. Hajin then asked Soho to take good care of himself. Soho was then confused to hear him suddenly say that. Hajin said, he is the main protagonist, he cannot be injured. Today, he attacked Yun Sung-ah without the slightest fear. Sung-ah's killing aura is real, and if the Jin comes too late, he might suffer severe injuries. Of course, he understands his principle, because Soho is the only protagonist who steps on the path of righteousness. But, can a main protagonist who only wants to do good and act righteously, overcome this difficult situation that is being distorted by an unknown being? And also, can he really send him home? Soho just felt Hajin was digressing. Where is there such a thing in this world? If I am the main protagonist, then you are also the main protagonist. No, rather, the whole world is the main protagonist in their own lives. His words really surprised Hajin. He then seemed to realize something. Soho then called him and said, the report he wrote about Chai Nayun, he has seen it. He felt it was a little harsh. Hearing that, Hajin said, he didn't mean to make it harsh, it's just that Nayun is not a natural archer. Hearing that, Soho asked, was that the reason why he made the bet with Nayun? Hajin confirmed that, and if he won, she would have to stop using the bow, but Soho didn't seem to agree with that. It was the path that Nayun had chosen. He didn't think it was good to encourage others to give up. Hearing that, Hajin then asked him, did he want him to encourage her to the end even though it was a dead end? Just saying nice things like he did, doesn't mean it's a good way in every situation. What if she worked hard until the end but all that awaited her was failure and disappointment? Would he be responsible then? Soho was silent for a moment hearing that. He then asked him, then how can he be sure that Nayun's talent is not an archer? Can he be held responsible for his words? Hajin said that he thought about this seriously. More than him, and he had been watching Chai Nayun for a long time, so he knew more about her than him. Soho was then surprised to hear that, but without having time to ask about it, they were then surprised by the sound coming from the direction of the door. Seeing that, Hajin could only sigh helplessly. He then activated one of the skills he had as a sharpshooter, hidden. He really felt helpless for using a skill like that for something trivial like this, but it made him know the origin of the voice. Nayeon was seen running with embarrassment from the direction of his room. She immediately ran to her own room. She really felt embarrassed when she heard Hajin's words earlier. She seemed to have been eavesdropping on the conversation between the two of them. Yona then woke up when she saw her enter. She asked, "What happened? Why was she so noisy?" Nayeon didn't know how to answer her. She then just said that it was nothing. Hearing that, Yona then told her to go to bed immediately if it wasn't important. She was very tired now. Nayeon said yes. She then said good night to her, but Nayeon really couldn't sleep at the moment. She then told herself to calm down, and tried to ignore what she had heard earlier, but Hajin's words kept coming to her mind. As she tried to forget it, Nayeon blushed when she remembered it. She wondered what was in his head until he said that, but then she suddenly heard a scream. She was then surprised and confused to hear it, and Yona, who thought the shout came from her, then scolded her. She had told her to be quiet. Hearing her misunderstanding, Nayeon then immediately said that this time it wasn't her. Yona immediately calmed down when she heard that. She then asked, "Then what was that?" Nayeon then pointed in a direction. In the direction that Nayeon pointed, Yona then saw a scene that shocked her very much. In Bethel's room, a maid was very surprised when she saw his current condition. She also seemed to be the one who shouted earlier. On his bed, there was a dead Bethel with a body covered in blood. It wasn't just them who were startled by the sound of the scream. The other cadets were too. They then came out of their rooms feeling confused. They felt the origin of the sound was from downstairs, and while the cadets were still feeling confused about what to do, they were then surprised when they saw Suho, who immediately acted and moved towards the origin of the sound. They then worriedly called out to him when they saw him just jump from there. Hajin was just as surprised as they were. He wondered if he was a monster or something. This was the third floor. Ignoring their surprise, Suho moved quickly towards the source of the sound, which was in Bethel's room. And when he finally arrived and opened the door to the room, he was shocked by what he saw. Seeing someone entering, the maid then immediately called for help. The Lord had been killed. Seeing Bethel's condition with blood flooding his body, Natasha also looked incredulous when she saw it. After examining Bethel's condition, she then said, "There seems to be heavy bleeding coming from a stab wound in his abdomen." Unfortunately he had, although she did not finish her words, but they knew what she meant. The maid sobbed when she heard the news. The butler then said that he was sure that this was the work of people who held a grudge against him. How could someone do this to him, who had dedicated his life to helping others? The cadets could not hold back their sadness at this time. The room was silent for a moment amidst the maid's sobs. Natasha then asked them all to wait outside while waiting for the arrival of the police and ambulance. She asked all the cadets to return to their respective rooms, but a cadet suddenly turned on the light switch that was there. It immediately lit up the whole room that had been dark. The cadet was Hajin. Natasha was then surprised to see it. She then confusedly asked, "Why did he turn on the lights?" Their gazes all then immediately focused on Hajin. But Natasha was then surprised when Hajin suddenly approached Bethel's body and touched him. She immediately told him not to carelessly touch the scene of the crime. She then told him to stay away before, but she was then surprised when Hajin suddenly pointed his gun right in her face. The cadets who saw it were also shocked, and they saw it. Nayeon then asked, "Is he crazy?" Ignoring their shock, Hajin then said to Natasha, "She is lying right now. Bethel is not dead yet. Bethel the villain is not dead." After he deceived everyone to escape from the crisis he experienced, he became the greatest strategist when he joined the Jin. Because the role of the villain is improvised, Hajin does not know what will happen in the future, so he thought it would be better if he finished him off now. Seeing the looks of horror and disbelief on their faces, Hajin knew it would be hard to convince the others. With his interference, he didn't know what uncertain events would happen and mess up the storyline. But he then recalled what Suho had told him. Hajin smiled as he recalled that. Even so, Hajin knew, without even thinking, one idiot man would be able to deal with that uncertainty. He then said that Bethel was not dead. He deceived everyone by pretending to be dead. Hearing that, Natasha pretended not to understand and asked, what was he talking about? She was a doctor and she had confirmed his death. Hajin explained, first of all, the wound was too shallow for someone who was stabbed from above. Next was this too intense bleeding. The only fatal wound he received was his heart. but the blood not only soaked the mattress, but it puddled on the floor like this, and the most important thing was, Hajin then opened his smartwatch and showed a hologram of someone to them. They were shocked when they saw it. It was a hologram of the con artist Burbot who was on the global wanted list. He looked very similar to Mr. Bethel, right? Natasha really didn't know what to answer now. She then asked the butler, he already called the police and ambulance, right? The butler was a little surprised at her question. He then answered yes. Natasha smiled at that. She then said, in that case, they can ask the police about this instead of arguing like this, because professional opinions can be trusted more than cadet opinions. After saying that, Natasha then said to them, let's end this business until the police arrive. But, Hajin suddenly reloaded his gun. Natasha was then surprised to hear that. She then immediately turned to him, and asked what he was doing. Hajin then placed the gun on Bethel's head. The cadets were confused and surprised to see that. They asked, what is he doing? Hajin didn't answer and said, he will shot his head after the count of 3, it doesn't matter since he's dead, right? And Hajin then started to count. Natasha was horrified to see that. She then asked them to please stop him. He was already a corpse. What was the need to overdo it? When it came to the second count, Natasha then anxiously said, they had already called the police, what more did he want? She told him to put down his gun right now, but Hajin of course ignored that, and when it came to the count of 3, Natasha then became very panicked. She then immediately ran, and shielded Bethel's body from his shots. She frantically asked him not to shoot, he was her father. She begged him not to shoot him. They were then shocked to hear this fact. Han-hyun as Natasha's boyfriend was the same. Natasha never seemed to tell him about it from the beginning. The maid and the butler were equally shocked, but the butler was then surprised when Hajin suddenly shot at him, but fortunately Hajin deliberately missed his shot, with the position of the gun aiming at him. Hajin then told him not to call the police, but just call the hero, telling them that they had caught a wanted criminal.